Another thing that could be a sweetener, and this leads to our next topic, if Mark Murphy were to say, oh, by the way, we're also trading for Julio Jones. That could be an enticement to get Aaron Rodgers to play one more year. How do we think the Julio Jones situation is going to play out, Peter? And I assume neither of us believe he's going to end up in Green Bay. Where do you think he's going to be in 2021?
Well, Mike, for a long time, I felt like New England was the best option for Julio Jones just because of Bill Belichick's work over the years with veterans and having them come in, having them fit in, okay? But two things happened after I wrote that last week, after I said I thought New England had a good shot. Number one, remember, when they dealt a fourth-round pick for Randy Moss in 2007, they basically told him, hey, listen, we can't pay you a lot of money. It's like whenever they get the old veterans who really want to get rescued from somewhere, Corey Dillon, Randy Moss, you basically tell them, hey, look, here's your contract. Here's what you're going to have to make to come here. And I doubt sincerely that the Patriots would agree to pay Julio Jones with his recent injury history, with the fact that he doesn't practice very much, $38 million over 3 years. So I now think that a team like Tennessee would have a very good shot at him. It makes all the sense in the world. Their receiving core is down. They've watched the Indianapolis Colts in player acquisition and drafting and at the quarterback position get really good. So I think it would serve the Titans in their best interest to figure out a way to work the cap this year. They don't have the money this year. They'd have to, fool around with the contract to do it. But the next 2 years, they're in good cap shape, and they could afford Julio Jones. So I think Tennessee is the best option for him.
You mentioned the Patriots not being willing to pay Julio Jones $38 million over 3 years. It works out to about $12.7 million per year. I believe Julio Jones doesn't want $38 million over 3 years. I think he wants more than $38 million.
You believe he wants more?
Years. He's either going to ask for more money on the way in the door, or he's going to play his ass off in 2021 and want more money after.
And make you give him that contract next year. Yeah.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do at that point? And that's the reality, whether it's Julio Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, the things that fractured the relationship with the current team can fracture the relationship with the new team. And one of the things that fractured the relationship between the Falcons and Julio Jones was his push 3 years ago to get more money. Once Matt Ryan got to $30 million a year and Julio was making $15, he said, what the bleep is wrong with this picture? And that he got to 22. And now, you don't think that you're on a deal worth $22 million per year when you got 3 years left at 38 that works out to 12.75, especially if you get to a new team. So whoever trades for him is going to have to factor that in as well. And Peter, that's why I think the trade hasn't happened. The window's wide open now. Trade hasn't happened because, number one, they can't get to where they want to be, and Arthur Blank, I'm told, is driving that bus. He can't understand why he can't get more than a second-round pick when he got a second-round pick for Mohamed Sanu and gave up a second-round pick for Hayden Hurst. How can I not get more than a second-round pick for Julio Jones? Theory I had yesterday. Let me get your thoughts on whether you like this, because I thought at one point they would have to keep Julio Jones because maybe when we get into the season and a team emerges as a Super Bowl contender and they know they're going to be, or at least assume they're going to be drafting late in round one, that may be when a team says, fine, we'll give you a first-round pick for this guy because we're going all in and we're going to try to win the Super Bowl. What if the Falcons and Julio Jones agree? Don't come to camp. Don't report. Stay in shape, but stay away. And at some point before the deadline, the Tuesday after week 8, we will trade you. That's the quid pro quo. I think there's a chance that's the only way they're going to get to a first-round pick.
Well, I think the issue with that is if you tell a guy don't come to camp, you don't have the ability really right now. I don't think, Mike, you might know this. I don't think you have the ability to say don't come to camp because then he's under contract. He'd still be fined $2 million total aggregate for missing camp. So you'd have to find some way to make him whole for that, wouldn't you?
You just don't put him on the reserve did not report list. You'd have to carry him on your 90-man roster. And then the challenge becomes, where do you pigeonhole him when the regular season begins? Hey, what if you just put him on active, physically unable to perform or something like that? I mean, look, they can, if they're committed to this, there's a way they could pull it off. Rich McKay knows the league well enough to know how to pull it off and not have anyone ask any delicate questions about Julio Jones' status. But you're right, and this is a fairly new twist in the CBA. If you don't report, it's mandatory that money is paid. It's mandatory that you can no longer say, okay, fine, we love you and we understand why you held out. We're not going to collect the $2 million in fines for staying away for all of camp. So that is a wrinkle in this, but I think Rich McKay would know how to figure it out. Either way, Peter, I think they're not going to get that first-round pick between now and training camp. I just don't think somebody's going to wake up and say, okay, fine,
I don't
Arthur,
see
we'll
it
give you
either.
the first-round pick.
I don't see it either. And Mike,
so somebody's got to blink.
That you talk about, the risk of the scenario that you talk about is, so I know one team that's very interested in Julio Jones. And this is a team that values practice and that values a guy's being able to be on the field for practice. And you hear all these stories of Julio Jones only practiced a handful of times last year. And however many times he practiced, he certainly doesn't practice every day or nearly every day. So I think one of the issues, one of the dangers is, after as physical a career as he has had, and now he's 32 years old, the question is, do you have a guarantee that he's going to play the first 7 games of this year and be healthy as a moose coming into the week of the trading deadline? That's a risky road to take if you're the Atlanta Falcons. And quite honestly, I would much rather have the Boyle lanced and the trade done right now for a solid 2 without contributing anything to the acquiring team with the $38 million.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.